I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a book club podcast.
Brisinger! Yeah? No, dude. How good was it to get nostalgic with this book?
I think that was its whole purpose, honestly. I don't think, because it doesn't bring anything, I shouldn't say anything. It doesn't really bring a lot to the narrative.
No, it just seemed kind of like
the universe or anything like that. It's just kind of like, it's been a while since we've been in this world. Here's a good excuse to get back into it.
Right. Just seemed like a fun retelling. Like almost like he could have done it in a Q&A, told us all this info, I even actually, after finishing this book, honestly, in the middle of reading this book, something happened and I wanted to figure out what happened in the book. And it was like a Q&A with him. And he was like, oh, that's a story for another time. That's a story for another time. It's like, dude.
Right. I wonder if he's just getting ready to get back into writing more actual novels for that universe or whatever. Because the reason that Inheritance isn't great, and Brisinger as well, is just because he was like totally burnt out and didn't really want to write anymore, or at least it was taking more out of him than he had anticipated in the beginning.
Right. He had a lot of ambition, it seemed like, when he was younger, like when he first came out, like he wrote the first two books when he was like 16 and 17, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and then they were just crazy successful and people wanted more, and so he was like, yeah, I can do more, blah, blah, but then...
And then he started getting writers and deadlines and...
Yeah. And he got kind of disenchanted and burnt out on the whole process. And even, because I think at the end of Brisinger, there was like not an excerpt, but like an afterword from him talking about why it's going to be 4 books and not 3 books. And he says that as he was kind of scoping it out, he realized that it was going to be much more than he had anticipated. And, and that he was, I don't think he uses the phrase burnout, but that he's, feeling like it's more than he wants to actually do with it. And he's kind of falling out of love with like writing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I mean, that sucks because now these books are not awesome. But, whatever.
I mean, even rereading the first one, I haven't done it in a while, but it does feel a little bit like, not immature, but it does feel like less, like he's not fully developed as a writer. And then
it's
in the second
definitely
one,
the book of a young author for sure. Yeah.
In the second one, he starts to develop a little bit more. I don't know if he'd ever been like in a relationship really at that point, so it felt like some of the scenes even there with him, with Eragon and Arya back then in book 2 were kind of a little bit not awkward or strained, but it just felt like they were written by somebody that was almost unexperienced in that field himself.
Right.
No offense to, he could be, for all I know, a super stud. He wrote both those books and he probably became one after it. But
right.
And then by the time the third book came around, it didn't seem like she was as much of a thing, and it just felt like it got really dark because it started off with this very dark theme of like, we got to go get vengeance for my brother's white woman, and she might not even be there, and all this stuff, and it just. And by that time, it felt like he was just sort of like, I got to get these few loose ends wrapped up, and then Inheritance, it kind of seemed like the full like amalgamation of his work, but like he was I felt like he was almost expecting more of a grand ending, because the way it ended was just kind of like, oh, okay, like that makes sense, like
it's
that's how he should have beaten him, but
yeah,
it just wasn't.
It's just a rides off into the sunset thing.
It kind of is,
except he heads east and the sun doesn't set in the east.
Oh yeah. That's a good point.
But I think that he lost his way with it. And it's evident in the books. And I always felt like he was a bit of a clumsy writer anyways.
Right. Yeah,
for those reasons that you talked about, that he's, that he was young when he wrote the first one, and then he continued to write and have the success rather than, and who knows how much he wrote before that as well.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a memory of seeing or reading somewhere that he had written at least like the first half of Eragon as like a school project or something like that. And this could be totally misremembered. I might be entirely wrong here, but I remember that being it. And his teacher was like, this is really good. You should flesh this out and maybe see about getting it published. Like, this is really good for someone your age. And he was like, okay, I'll try that. And so he did it. So if that was like the first thing, period, that he ever wrote outside of like maybe some short story or something like that he fucked around with as a younger kid, then that makes even more sense that everything went the way that it did.
Dude, yeah. I had so many conversations with people about like how we thought the third book in the trilogy was going to, end it all. And like, and then, you find out there's going to be another one or 2 more. And then after Brisinger, it was like all these different talks about like, not conspiracy theory, but like what fan theory you think might happen or whatever you've created on your own. I remember talking to a girl in college, Karen. I don't know if you remember her from high school. We were talking about.
I don't remember.
We were talking about the book series, and she said back when she thought it was going to be a trilogy, she thought the titles were going to be Eragon, Eldest, and Empire. Like she thought it was going to be a trilogy, all three starting with E's,
right?
And she thought Empire was going to be where like I think she's predicted that like Nasawada was going to die, and that Roran would end up becoming like the king, and when she was like explaining a lot of it to me, I was like, that makes sense for like the way it felt like it was fleshed out in the beginning, like as a young author. And then I felt like he kind of probably heard that from a lot of people, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do what y'all expect. And then he kind of maybe changed it because Brissinger is just so different than Eragon and Eldest, and it's just like Brissinger. It's like, I mean, I get why he named the book after that word because it's so important
it's
and it's
really
the point of
pivotal.
the novel.
Yeah, that's the first spell he casts.
Yeah,
the
name of his sword.
I think that, or maybe not even I think, but I hope that this is him either just revisiting writing again, and maybe he'll go back to the Eragon mythos, or even if it's just writing other short stories like this. Because so for anyone that doesn't remember, that didn't read this week, the book is called The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm. It's got a couple of weird subtitles. Which, let me look. It's like Tales from Alagasia, Volume 1, Eragon. So, by nature of that title, that leads me to believe that if there's a Volume 2, it could revolve around a different character, or at least the different character would be the vehicle for the short stories that are in it, like in the instance of this book.
Yeah, hopefully Book 2 would be Murtagh.
I hope so.
Because he's always been a favorite character of mine. And
I like Murtagh better than I like Eragon.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's talk about when you read. Sorry, I just got right into the book. When did you read?
Knowing that this was a bit longer, 140 pages or whatever it is, I tried to break it up as much as I could because I didn't want to have to read the entire thing like last night, Yeah. So I read while I was at work over, the past week. And I was able to knock out like the first section immediately, and then, just on and on, just as much as I could.
Yeah. How was work? It was a good week?
Yeah, it's whatever. It's just same thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, just this weekend I ended up painting a lot of the house, so I was like painting a lot of rooms in the house, and that took up like all day on Sunday, and it was just felt like every day I was doing something else, not procrastinating, but there was just something on the list. And dude, it was so dumb. Yesterday I was like, hey, how do I read? Like, I don't put on music, right? You just sit down and do it. People were looking at me like, what? I was like, dude, I just haven't read in forever. I'm used to listening to the book. So it's like, you just put the audiobook on and sweep the house or something, or just sit there if you want.
Right.
Like I used to do that and come home from work and sit in front of the fish tank and keep listening to my audiobook because it was like a 30-minute drive, and then I was in it.
Right,
I'd just been there with him for 30 minutes, so I wanted to keep listening, and I just sit and stare at the fish. But that was, I waited till last minute. I read 200 pages of it last night, and then the last 60 before today, But it, like you're saying, it was a longer read, but it wasn't like necessarily time consuming. It was easy revisiting these characters. It wasn't.
I didn't never feel like I was trudging through it in any way. Even in I think that of the three of them, the least exciting one was the second one, just because. Well, and I guess we'll talk about it or whatever. But just as a bit of a quick rundown for what happens in the other series for anybody who hasn't read the Eragon series, is
starts with Eragon.
Just to give a little bit of context for this book. It there's really like 4 things that happen across the entirety of the 4 books. So, it's like Eragon gets a dragon. He goes off from home. He's like a farmer boy and learns about like this great war and like the history of dragons, because his new dragon is like the first dragon in a long time or whatever,
they
like
hadn't even seen
100
dragons.
Years or some shit like that.
Yeah, dragons were so old that it's like elves.
Some people just didn't even believe about or believe in them anymore.
Yeah, people didn't believe in them anymore. Like humans didn't.
Humans that hadn't lived long enough to see them,
Yeah. That book is basically just like imagine Star Wars, but like put a dragon in there instead of the Force, because like
Right.
that kind of is what it runs down
The
to.
whole series is really Star Wars heavy.
That's
And
a good
he's
point.
even admitted it, that he was like, yeah, I took a
love Star
lot of
Wars.
story beats from Star Wars.
Yeah, it was fun reading about like a lot of things that he took inspiration from, like
Mhm.
the Dragon Riders of Pern series. I forgot the author of that one, but she wrote this epic series, and I know he pulled some from that.
Mhm.
He liked Stephen King's. I'm pretty sure it was straight up the Dark Tower series. And
Yeah.
I think he just he liked certain authors and things they brought to the table, but you can't imitate necessarily all those traits, even if you want to. And and in his books, righteousness seemed to kind of always bleed through. Even at the end of Aragon, he makes a name for himself by killing a shade, which is like this dark creature that is super hard to kill, and he kills this shade, but he ends up getting a huge scar on his back from this shade's blade. And the whole second book is spent, he's training with the elves. He feels like he's not good enough. He's still really good at magic, but if he strains himself too hard, like in sword fighting, which used to be his forte, he'll have a stroke, or like something incapacitating where he couldn't even fight anymore. And
So he gets like healed of that.
yeah, that he gets healed in this ceremony, and then they have a big war.
And they go on back to the war that's at hand, because there is a rebellion against the Empire already in place.
Mm-hmm.
And he had met them whenever he had first gone to see the dwarves in Aragon.
Yeah, he met them with his half-brother who was fleeing from the war,
Yeah.
and he ends up becoming a really important character who everybody loves, in my opinion.
And so, and then in like the battle at the end of that book, is when that character Murtagh comes back, his half-brother.
Yeah.
And we see that he's now he's another writer as well, but he's under the control of the Emperor.
Yeah, basically just like Aragon was like the light side of the coin and Murtagh was the dark side. Not that they were good and evil, but like they're splattered past. Like Murtagh had a lot more stress and strain. He came from nobility, but like he was never recognized as nobility. Like he was always struggling to kind of make a name for himself, and he was always getting like the short end of the stick, even though he was noble and got training and lived in a castle. Like
he's the son of the Emperor.
I think he's the son of the Emperor's right-hand man, because it's Aragon's dad, too.
Maybe
Aragon's not the
yeah.
son of Galbatorix. He's the son of Morzan, I believe.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then Morzan had the blade of,
and he
what was his name? The sword's name? The red one? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. The sword Aragon
and he was just
uses,
like a crazy evil person, and so he just didn't even care about Murtagh. He was like, this is just like some spawn. I don't give a fuck about that.
Yeah, it was the spawn of one of his riders. It was like he had good blood in him, but he was like just some...
So it was all... whatever, and then
he
then
binds him to his will, and he manipulates the dragon, and he makes the dragon into a beast bigger than Aragon's dragon, who had been alive for almost a year.
He like accelerates his growth or whatever. And then
that's basically the end of that book. The fight, and
then the next book is just more fighting. Aragon's cousin Roran, his girlfriend, gets like kidnapped by these other monsters that we've been dealing with the whole time, the Razak.
That we forgot to
and
mention.
Then, it's whatever. and so then now that like this big battle had been won for the war, Roran's like, Aragon, fucking come with me to help find Katrina, because it's all your fault that this happened to our village.
Yeah, he does sort of blame him for that.
Yeah, and so Aragon's like, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'm going to go help you. So they go do that, and they kill the Razak, and then save Katrina, and then Aragon goes back to the war or whatever, and then his elf teacher and his dragon that were hidden in the elf forest die in a battle. And then the fourth book is just more of the war, and then Aragon ultimately kills Galbatorix, the Emperor, and everybody's fine.
Yeah, the big
Everything's
thing,
okay.
Like book 3, it was like they introduced this concept, the Eldunari, like the heart of hearts within dragons. It's like a stone that they can, when they die, or not even when they die, like while they're still alive, they can pull it out of their body, and it carries like their soul.
It's like a soul stone.
And so in Brisingr, we learned about the Eldunari, and then Aragon goes and after Glader and Ormus, his teacher and writer, like that died, he keeps his teacher's dragon's heart, and they go together to find the other Eldunari in inheritance, and they also find out like their true names, and And then they find this vault of stones with all these Eldunari in
At
it.
the old...
I believe they even have eggs in there
mountain.
too, right? Weren't there dragon eggs in there, or was it just stone?
I think they might find a couple or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't think it was anything substantial.
And then there was
like
a couple that
rebuild the
Galbatorix
race,
had
yeah.
that they, obviously get from the whatever the capital city was.
Yeah.
And after they, defeat Galbatorix, and then Aragon's like, okay, well, I'm going to go rebuild the riders. And he, reweaves the magical contract between riders and dragons so that it also includes dwarves and Urgles, which is this other, barbaric race that's been, a constant enemy for a long time.
Like orcs, dwarves,
but then
elves.
they sort of realize that the Urgles are just other people that are just, really prone to war, and it was easy for Galbatorix to manipulate them to be evil or stuff like that. So Aragon's like, we're going to give them a chance. This is a new world, blah, blah, blah. And then he just rides off into the sunset.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time in the other books, introducing, Roran, the cousin, and he has to go travel with these Urgle forces or whatever, and he has to, win them to their side. And it's just a whole bunch of... And there are little things we didn't touch on, but that's basically everything that happens. The Eldunari end up, fusing with Aragon and making him super... Not fusing, but, sharing their strength with him, and he can... They learn the name of all things too, which is kind of cool. Right at the end of the book, they learn the name for everything. Arya, the elf that Aragon is crushing on the whole time, she gets her own dragon, and she becomes queen of the elves. His half brother Murtagh escapes. He gets to go do his.
Now
own
that Galbatorix is dead, he's no longer bound to him.
So he does his own thing, and then Aragon is now in charge of being the.
He's going to lead the new riders, however long it takes new riders to come about.
Yeah, enter us in the new book.
And so it just starts. So there's 3 short stories here, like we've already talked about. The first one, The Fork, Aragon's stressing out about work. He's doing all this clerical stuff because he's, running a settlement or whatever. And then he goes and talks with the Eldunari, and they're like, hey, we're going to show you something that's going on to distract you. And he's like, okay. And it's Murtagh at an inn in Cunon, which is one of the coast cities that we had seen in the past or whatever. And he's searching for something. He gets in a scuffle, and he's like, all right, well, I'm going to keep looking.
And give some wisdom to a little girl.
Yeah. And so that's it. So, there's some mystery that Murtagh is going to find or whatever. And we know that he's around. And he also, muses over, going to find Aragon and, join the effort and stuff like that. He's like, but nah, I got to figure out what this mystery thing is.
Right.
Stay tuned for the next book.
Exactly. Yeah. It's basically that whole section was building up to there being a new darkness in the world, and Aragon and Murtagh having to team up to face it. If not team up, sure, team up in some way. They're going to team up somehow. But it was kind of cool. It didn't tell you much, but it gave you enough to make you kind of think. It seemed very it
was entertaining, and then finding out that it was Murtagh at the end of it was like, oh, cool,
dude. The second,
because I like him a lot.
Yeah, the way they described the character didn't look anything like what you remember Murtagh looking like, but then. As I was sitting there, I was like, this guy's got to be somebody big. I don't know how long it took. I had a hint of feeling, I hope this is Murtagh. And then when he said, the single word or whatever, and then it didn't work on their enchantments, the people he fought, I was like, it's got to be him. He's the only other one that knows the true name of magic.
Yeah, but we don't.
Aragon.
But it could be somebody random as well. Who knows? I was trying to remember anybody that it might be.
Else.
And it's been so long since I read the books that I was like, man, I'm not coming up with anything.
Yeah.
And then whenever Thorn speaks to him with the telepathic link, I'm like, it's that dude. And even in that moment, I was like, Murtagh.
Yeah.
And then the second story is just about Angela the herbalist, which is this witch that shows up in the first book and then kind of flits in and out of the story throughout the rest of it.
Yeah, she just seems like a bit more of she helps
she's
the story go
wanderer.
along.
Yeah. She kind of pops in, has some wisdom of, she's got a werecat who tells prophecies sometimes.
Yeah, if he likes you.
So she's just an answer giver, like you said.
Yeah, she's like the prophet.
And then we get a little bit of backstory about her where she used to study under this dude in this library that was in a different dimension. So we're introduced to the idea that different dimensions exist in this mythos.
Yeah.
And then, some other really sci-fi sort of stuff. And she goes to get Elva, which is this little girl that Aragon accidentally cursed.
Yeah.
And then she's like, all right, now we're going to go run around and train, and we're going to go see Aragon. And then that I think that all it really, because this is also the shortest one.
Yeah, it was very short, really quick, unfortunately too. Because I like them as characters. I like Elva and Angela both. I mean, with Elva's curse being that she has to be like the perfect shield for anybody. Like originally, she was cursed to be the perfect shield, and she had to help. She was
compelled to help.
Compelled to help, and then Aragon lifted the compelling part of the curse, but she still could sense.
She still has all the abilities.
Fears, and she knew, she could still had her ability, which
so it's a lot of stress for her to have to deal with that.
Yeah, there was a big thing that she could be the one that takes out Galbatorix because she's the only one that could see what truly fears him, like what he's truly afraid of, and she could attack him.
That would have been a nice.
I thought
that's
how they were going to end it, honestly, but that's not how it ended.
No, not at all.
No.
And then I think that the only purpose of this one, from looking at it as expecting there to be more written and published at some point, is to introduce those sci-fi ideas about the mythos.
Yeah,
and to reveal that there's some like laws of existence in this world that we didn't know about and certainly didn't expect.
Yeah, she did something very Neverwhere. She acted like Door, and she drew a door on the wall, and she popped it open, and then they left through the door. I was like, what book am I reading? Yeah. It was good, but sorry, I slapped the table. Yeah. It was good, but...
And then after that, Aragon just gets an Urgle story from the Urgles one night, after some dwarves die while they're doing some tunneling in the mountain, and then everybody's all bummed out about it. And the Urgles are like, you're too sad. You should listen to this story. We'll tell a story that'll cheer you up. And he's like, okay, whatever. And so one of them tells like a story of their people. And that story is what the third short story is. And it's just about this Urgle who, her clan gets attacked by Vermund the Grim, which is this old dragon. And then she's like, well, I'm going to have to kill Vermund now because he killed my father. And then her journey trying to get stronger to do so. And then she becomes a shaman to use magic. Yeah, Ilgra, that's her name. Yeah,
Ilgra.
And then she devises this plan, but then some Lether Blocker, which are like adult versions of the Razak, come and attack her village. And then she's able to get Vermund to come fight them. Yeah, and then there's this big confrontation. She kills with like a trap that she had set. She kills the Razak, and Vermund flies off. And she's like, "This is just like an existence that we have, and maybe one day one of us will kill the other. But I need to just accept that he's there and he's stronger than me now."
Well, the thing is that you got to accept that there's always something out there. That was like the main, and also I think it was alluding to there's something else out there, and I'm writing another book, guys. But the message that from that story that I gathered was just there's always something bigger, badder out there.
And you need to just accept that that's a thing, and not be so worried about it or upset or let it consume you in any way.
Yeah, they ended up using the curse of that dragon to help save them from the Lether Blocker that were going to eat and kill every single one of them. It was like the lesser of two evils. Get this dragon to protect his food.
Yeah. The dragon is far preferable to or Lether Blocker, I think.
That's what it was.
Sounds right. They're like horrible, awful monsters. And I think that was just like a short story that he like had written at some point, thinking like it would be cool to explore like some Urgle culture. What would be a good story about Urgle culture? And he came up with that and he was like, I need an excuse to publish this.
I think the first writer that at the end of the book an egg hatches, I think the first writer it goes to is going to be an Urgle or a dwarf. I'm leaning
because he leaves two eggs back in Alagasia. He leaves one with the dwarves and he leaves one with the Urgles, assuming that it'll hatch for one of them and then they'll come seek him out at the mountain to do training and stuff like that. And then at the very end of this, one of the eggs that he has in his possession there at the mountain hatches. Yeah. But we're not told who it hatches for.
Yeah, so who knows? It could be anybody. What if it hatched for Saphira?
Dragon riding dragon.
Yeah.
I assume that it was one of the elves. Because the elves were the ones who were there. Like
he's with the Urgles. I guess they probably were all hanging out by the campfire, so they probably
they're like all there. But whenever he like gets the signal to go, because like all the Eldonari like start being like loud.
Yeah, Bloodgarm and all those guys were there, and they got
as he's running to go see what it is, the people that are there are elves, and they're like fucking like losing their shit. They're like, oh my god,
the elves getting another one, dude. I don't want the elves getting another one. They're already perfect,
Yeah.
They don't need another leg up, and they already have a dragon, dude. They got a queen with a dragon. And the humans have a dragon. It's got to be the other two.
Yeah, but for it to be neat, it would be an elf at the mountain, and then if there's a next mainline novel, then the egg that was left with the dwarf shows up, or they go to find the dwarf with his dragon.
That's a good idea.
And then the same thing with the Urgles, and then we've got one of every race, not counting Arya, who is of a different faction. She's not part of the Riders.
She didn't even do any training.
Yeah.
She's just like, no, you're.
Well, she's already like 800 years old or whatever, like that.
I think she's only 100, but still.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, and then the elves are like naturally great warriors or something like that.
Yeah, they're like naturally like 7 times faster than humans and thrice as
But she's got all her elf queen stuff to do, so she can't get involved in the rider stuff unless some calamity happens.
She's got to be suicidal, dude. She's immortal and the queen forever. That's got to be so much freaking paperwork with not as much love as you'd think. At least in this universe, like maybe the
she
queen
definitely didn't seem like her becoming queen. I thought was also stupid because she didn't. Yeah, she never wanted to. She was a princess. Her mother was the queen. And then her mother dies in, like, the final battle.
Yeah.
And she's, like, she never wanted to be queen. She wanted to be a warrior. She was the one who would transport the eggs throughout the forest to see if it would hatch for any of the elves.
With her ex-boyfriend.
And so she just wanted to be, like, a traveler and be, like, on the front lines for the fight.
Yeah.
But I guess the argument is that now that the fight is over and the dragons can be brought back, that being, like, her main goal or whatever, she's like, okay, well, now I can administrate and help from this angle or something like that. Yeah. But I still thought it was stupid. She shouldn't have become queen. She should have just gone to the mountain with Aragon.
In my deep heart, I wanted, like, if there was going to be another dragon, I wanted to hatch for, like, Roran or somebody stupid like that over Arya. I just didn't want her to have a dragon. In my head, like, it's so petty. But in my head, it's like the elves are too perfect. And a lot of them seem kind of like douches. Even though it was really just the one that was rude to Aragon.
Elves often are in most mythoses as well. A lot of the elves in Lord of the Rings are, at the very least, they're very high and mighty. And they might not outright be like, you suck. Yeah. But you'll be like, oh man, he thinks I suck. Like, you can tell almost.
And I mean, he even kind
of... That's because they live forever and they are immortal and perfect for the most part. So they do have a lot of reasons to believe that they're
and they have to be cunning because they speak in a language that you can't lie in. Yeah. So, like, half of their cunning is, like, you tell a half-truth or whatever. Like, that'll get you through. But
so they're, like, extremely intelligent and eloquent. And so it's... Whenever you have characters that are, by nature, better than everybody, it's easy to see that they think that they're better than everybody.
Oh, for sure. So which of the stories did you like the best and didn't like the best? Let's just
The first one was the most interesting.
I agree.
And I like Murtagh the best of all the characters.
I agree. Both of us.
The second one has the most implication for everything.
Okay.
Because it just introduces new rules.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there too.
The third one is definitely interesting just because all that we know about Urgles for the first 3 books is that they're evil monsters.
Yeah, and then
then in the 4th book we find out that they're actually just people. And that now they're going to be brought into the fold or whatever.
Yeah.
We learn like just very little about their culture from the one who goes like and approaches Aragon to try and mend the bonds or whatever. And we learn like small things that I guess he would need to learn for like future interactions or whatever. So to now have like a bit of culture from them is interesting and I think worthwhile, but to me was the least necessary of the 3 for this. Although it is just a compilation of short stories, so none of them are necessarily necessary in the great scheme of things.
Honestly, some of the stuff that I gained from, or that like happened with Aragon, I found to be more valuable than like some of the stuff that we were told, like, about that little girl and all her BS with that other little girl that she hated. It's like, I didn't care about them at all. But on the side, when we were learning about Elva, and then they used her power to fix some of the Eldinari that had gone insane, that really, like, I was like, cool, they're making her relevant, they're making her power good to where it's helping dragons, so
Elva has the potential to be the most interesting character, period.
So,
so I hope that whatever it is that comes next continues to do stuff with her, and I think that they will, because Angela has designs for Elva. I don't think that they're like personal designs. I think that she just recognizes that Elva could be either really good for all humanity or, all the races or whatever. She can be a really strong positive force, or she can be an extremely strong evil force, depending on, who it is that helps her grow.
Yeah.
And then with all those, transdimensional stuff that gets introduced and some other, I can't remember all of the weird stuff, but there was like 2 or 3 different like hard sci-fi things that Angela sort of reveals.
Yeah, she started talking about space and like the stars.
Yeah,
like
she finds out that the Earth is round.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, is this some sort of round Earth agenda that Christopher Paolini's
right? Yeah. So there's a lot of science being revealed, and it'll be interesting to see if that means anything, or if that's just now that she's just like going to be like an astromancer and teach Elva how to do that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
So I think that has the most implication, and then the first one was the most fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed the first one the most just because it was Murtagh, and it was a fun story. Yeah, the fork, and it was just, just gave you Murtagh back, and and then he even like fiddles around with the idea of like, maybe I'll hang out with Aragorn again soon.
Yeah.
I mean, he is trying to make my name come back and be good.
Yeah. He's but he thinks that he still needs some time alone or with Thorn, just the two of them, and also whatever that mystery is. Yeah, he's looking into something. We never find out what the thing is or who any of the potential people are that might be involved in that.
The only thing we found was like the black stone that they gave him.
Yeah,
like,
he gets a black stone that looks like it was burnt or something like that.
Yeah, or like it was burning
and
still
that's
or
it.
something. Yeah,
yeah.
And then those guys were like gave
it's
him
total
some
setup.
sort of like omen, like as he was trying to get the info out of him. They're like, you don't know what you're getting into.
It would be the first chapter of a novel.
Yeah.
It's all set up. I feel like it belongs more as the first chapter of whatever the next mainline novels are. Mm-hmm. And like at the very least, the first one revolves almost solely around Murtagh.
I sure hope so. Well, I mean, this one
because like it ends with the reveal that it is Murtagh. Mm-hmm. We get the setup for whatever the new adventure is. It's in a familiar place, so it's like it's total. Like, even if not first chapter, but prologue stuff for a next novel. It just happens to be in this short story compilation.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was lacking in this. Like, in all the other books, they had, like, a big, fight and resolution kind of at the end. Even if it wasn't, like, completely done, like, you kind of knew, like, all right, we're good for now, and we're setting the stage for next time. Like, this one just feels like a lot of prep work, but like not really going anywhere. Like, hey, they're still alive. They're still dealing with stuff. I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it a lot. I just wish there was a little bit more of like the juicy characters that we like. A little more Aragorn, a little more. Even Roran would have been a good little touch up. I didn't want any Naswada. I hate her, dude. She I didn't hate her as much. As an adult rereading it.
Yeah.
But then
I remember liking her.
Yeah, as an adult rereading it, I'm like, wow, these chapters are good.
But I mean, in any case, this is all.
It's all
books.
Just talking about.
But it was good. I'm glad to have read it. Mm-hmm. It makes me want there to be more. Hopefully, there is at some point.
Yeah.
Who knows? This just came out.
Yeah.
If he's writing another mainline novel, then who knows how far he is into that. If he's not far into it at all, it could be several years before another one comes out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, like you said, I kind of hope this was just him dipping his toes back into the writing world and trying to get,
It definitely, with the subtitles, makes it seem like there's going to at least be another short story compilation. Mm-hmm. So hopefully at least that much is true. And then every like 2 or 3 years, you can just dip back in for a second and be like, oh yeah, this is a cool world, and then be done,
Yeah.
Anyways, for this next series of episodes, we're going to read a book called The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch.
Nice.
It's about, at least in the Kindle edition, it's like 500 pages. So about average. Preview thing that's on Amazon.com for The Lies of Locke Lamora. An orphan's life is harsh and often short in the mysterious island city of Comore. But young Locke Lamora dodges death and slavery, becoming a thief under the tutelage of a gifted con artist. As leader of the band of light-fingered brothers known as the Gentlemen Bastards, Locke is soon infamous, fooling even the underworld's most feared ruler. But in the shadows lurks someone still more ambitious and deadly. Faced with a bloody coup that threatens to destroy everyone and everything that holds meaning in his mercenary life, Locke vows to beat the enemy at his own brutal game or die trying.
Dude, this is our first series, and I am freaking in. Like, when we were looking for books, I typed in pirate books, and the sequel to this has a big scary pirate ship on it. So just hearing that, it's like I cannot wait to see what kind of, tomfoolery we get into with these guys. Macklemore, I guess.
George R. R. Martin says, fresh, original, and engrossing, gorgeously realized.
Old man.
What does he know?
Yeah.
George R. R. Martin. So this is something that was recommended to me years and years ago by a friend, and I just never got around to reading it for whatever reason. So I'm excited to read it.
I'm excited too, man. I don't remember if we pitched it ourselves for this podcast, or if we just talked about it off mic or whatever.
I seem to remember bringing it to the table at some point, but I don't think it ever made any of the cuts.
Yeah, and I'm excited because like I kept seeing it on our book lists or whatever for like fantasies as we were looking around, and then this popped up, and then as we found just more and more about it as a series, that'll be exciting too because we can either hop back onto it or just let this be the little
right, yeah,
the seed of thought.
Yeah, I wonder how... There's 4 books in the series, I think. Or maybe 5. I don't remember what it said. Doesn't matter. And so I wonder how interconnected they are. Mm-hmm. Or if they're standalone stories. Because if they're standalone stories, then it might be a little bit more feasible for us to maybe not even immediately continue in the series, but to come back to it afterwards, But anyways, this book is broken up into different books. There's a prologue, Book 1, Ambition, Book 2, Complication, Book 3, Revelation, Book 4, Desperate Improvisation, and an epilogue. So for this week, we'll just read the prologue and the first book, Ambition. And then after that, we'll read Complication and then Revelation, and we'll just go book by book by book. I think that'll be easy enough to break up. Hopefully, with them being divided into main sections like that, that means that they'll wrap up in a way that is easy to talk about, as opposed to trying to figure out, weird stopping points and things like that. So the prologue in the first book, and we'll see you all next week. I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Schaffer.
The Dog Ears and Timestamps.